Good evening, everybody. Alright, we've got a late stream this evening. We've got some lights and everything. When it's dark, you can't see them during the day. It's not strong enough. Right. So what are we doing today? Well, yeah, that's the question, isn't it? We're going to have a quick review of what we thought about Floem and update my Rust GUI tech spreadsheet. Alright, let's dive into the spreadsheet. Which spreadsheet you're all wondering? Well, let me show you. This one. That one. So, I've been going through trying some of the GUI technologies. I spent quite a bit of time with Freya and Visio. And I wasn't able to achieve what I wanted to in Freya or Visio. So then we tried Floem, right? And we had some mixed, mostly success with Floem. But what are the buts? Right. So keyboard navigation, bad. Documentation, bad. What do I mean by bad documentation? Well, let me show you. What do I mean? Here we go. So this is the Floem repo. Here we go. Right, and it shows you sort of like a little teeny tiny quick start thing, which is literally just that. Has some features and it's got a widget gallery, right? And then it says go to the API docs. Right, there's no book. So with Visio, for instance, there was like a getting started book, and there are with some other GUI frameworks that we use. Freya had one as well, but with Floem, no. At least if there is one, I don't know where it is. So if I'm wrong, please put comments in and let me know. But I didn't find one, so we basically just had to dive straight in and start writing code. Which is, I don't know, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. You sort of want an overview of how the thing is supposed to work, really. Like, what's the architecture look like? Right? What are the fundamental design philosophies and all this kind of stuff with this system, rather than just like a feature list, right? So you just have to dive straight into the code. So we dove straight into the code, and when we got stuck, we referenced the documentation. But the problem is we got unstuck quite a few times. So for instance, you go see all the built-in views. You're like, okay, great. And then you go, well, okay, let's have a look at the one we want to use, tab. No documentation. Nothing. Especially confusing is how you even try and create tabs. There was a tab method, which I can't find on here. Blanket implementation. Views, structs, enums, functions, tab. That's the one. That. Like, that's what you get. Right? And you read the code and it's not much more helpful. You actually have to read the code in order to find out how it's supposed to work. And even then you're sort of left guessing quite a lot. So the documentation for a lot of things is pretty bad. Other things that I struggled with is like the layout system. There's like, we had this concept of like an H stack and a V stack, but there's another kind of stack called a stack, which isn't an H stack or a V stack, but you don't know what it is, which is also very confusing. Yeah. So I wasn't sold on the where are we? On the documentation. It's not really clear like how you create views as well. Like if you try and implement your own view, I really had no idea what I was doing when I tried. And I looked at some of the examples of some of the views that are in there, and it's like I was just left scratching my head most of the time. So, you know, for example, let's have a look at just a random view. Here we go. Let's have a look at the I don't know, let's look at the tab view. right? Because I wanted to know how this worked, because there was no documentation, right? So you're looking at it, and you can create a tab with some functions, and then it's got effects, and then it starts talking about diffs. You're like, okay, wasn't really expecting to see stuff about diffs in there. And then more effects with active keys, and then you look at the implementation for a view and it's got an ID and a name, and you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And then you look at the update one, and you're just like, what's it doing? What's the point of this code? What's the intent of this code? It's very difficult to work it out, like from the outside, from someone who's not the author of this. It's yeah. Apparently there's a state, and if the state is a diff, then you apply a diff. And then, but I don't know what the diff is, why you have a diff, what the diff might contain. It's just a bit odd. It's very opaque. So you're like, okay, well, let's have a look at another one, dim stack. So you're like, okay, so a bit of documentation on this one. Good. And you look at the implementation of it, and you like update, and they all just seem to be like applying diffs. And then there's some other stuff about creating diffs. Okay, we'll have a look at another one. Container. Wraps around another view. I mean, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. It's just a wrapper, so it's not very interesting, that one. Let's have a look at button, perhaps. So how do you make a button? So you've got impl button, and you've got some stuff, and it's all a bit funky and woolly, really, to me. So don't really know how to create views, like images. You know, and it's the same when you sort of look through quite a lot of these things. It's like, eh. Okay, so that's one thing. So the documentation, bad, right? We'll go back to this. Keyboard navigation was bad. It didn't really do what you want a lot of the time. In the widget example, for instance, I'll just recap that. Run the widget gallery. Right, we've got our widget gallery, and then, you know, like we press tab, and then I've got up and down as well. And then, okay, you're like, okay, that's a bit weird. So you press return, and then it's like, well, what's the point of me being able to go up and down on here? And then, you know, tab doesn't go over here, and then we'll try tabbing around on here. You know, that bit's okay. So you try say lists, for instance, though. You can go up and down the list, but it's not hideous. There is some keyboard navigation, but this one, it's like, how do you know when you've got focus? It does change colour slightly. Okay, it's not very clear though. Drop down boxes, these are always got problems. This one's not too bad. Visio is worse, I think, with the keyboard navigation. But it uses return to select instead of space. So, you know, we'd have to go in and fix things and maybe maintain our own patches because everyone else is already using return for everything. You know, so that's not ideal. One of the other killers for me, though, is the lack of internationalization support. I dug into this a little bit more. Right, so if we go onto the project that uses Floem, right, which is this lapse editor, right, and then we go on to the issues. And it was like, I think there was a pull request, where is it? I found relation. Where is it? Did I make a note of it? Maybe I did. Oh wait, I remember where I made note in the Discord channel. Hold on a second, let me find you the link. Yeah, this one. Okay, I found it. This one. So I found this feature request in Laps, but it's closed, right? And it doesn't have the feature. There's no plans to add localization system into Laps. And there's some worrying comments that says won't implement localization until after a migration to Xylem, right? And this is worrying because if the main driver for Phloem is migrating to Xylem, and Xylem's not ready yet, then what becomes of Phloem? Is it just going to die and just be left? Is anyone going to care about writing any documentation or using it or anything like that? So it's very concerning that it might just suddenly die when its main reason for existence moves over to a different GUI framework. Where did we get to with our little example though? Let's just quickly recap that before we start looking at the next thing on the list. So this is where we got to, and let me just go over what we were trying to create. Because we have I wrote down the requirements for this. We're basically trying to create a test case where we have a window with a toolbar and a drop down to change language, and ideally the changing language should happen immediately, which it does in Visio. And we have a main window. It's sizable. It's got a toolbar. We can create press new. It creates a form in a tab. That tab then lets you choose what type of document to create, an image file or a text file, and then you press OK on it, and it shows you like a text file or an image file, right? Similarly, you can open either a text file or an image file, and when you open it, it's supposed to appear in a tab. You should be able to close individual tabs, close all of the tabs. The state on each tab is supposed to be maintained so that when you switch from one tab to another tab, the state is not supposed to be lost. There's also supposed to be no expensive refetching of state when you switch tabs. So for instance, imagine you had a web browser with two tabs in it, and you created, every time you switch tab, it reloaded the page, right? That's an expensive operation, and that's the kind of thing which we don't want. It must maintain its state when switching tabs. Which you think might be easy, but it turns out it's not. Who knew? So then we've got an image tab and a text tab. We've got the documentation for those, the requirements for those. And there's also application state and a config file where you need to load up config and use the config to decide whether to display a home page or not on startup. And there's also some other requirements about listing the open files and reopening them when you reopen the application. And then there's some bonus points, right? And these bonus points are here to sort of drive the direction of how you implement things or where a project might go. So, for instance, if you've got tabs, right, someone might come up and say, can I have this tab in a new window so I can look at two things at the same time? Right? You can do this in web browsers. You can go right-click, move to new window, for instance, and it's very useful being able to do that. And when you're working on the kind of project that we're working on, you will want to look at an old project that you did and cross-reference things while you're planning to create the new project, right? So being able to switch between two things and also display two things at the same time is very useful. It's also quite useful to be able to have multiple tabs of the same document, as in it's similar kind of thing to a web browser again, in you can have multiple tabs for the same site, for instance. Similar kind of thing. Maybe you've got an image and you zoomed in it on one corner in one tab, and then you zoom into the other corner on the other tab, and maybe you draw on it in one area and it shows you it on the other tab, right? We're not doing drawing in this example, but that's kind of like a real world example of what you might see. We wanted a status bar showing some tab specific state. And we also want some sanity to the tab naming system, where if you've got two tabs open and they're both showing the same file name, then you need to show more of the path, right, in order to be able to distinguish between the two tabs. So for instance, your IDE will already do something very similar to that. If I have two files called mod, for instance, right, in your IDE, it shows views mod and editor mod, so you can distinguish between which mod file you're looking at, right? And the point of that particular requirement is because then you need to have the list of tabs, and there's going to be need to be something which can look at all the other tabs to decide if they need to update the name of the tab somehow. So it complicates it, but again, this is a real world example. So yes, that was the requirements. So where do we get to with this? Well, this is what we got. Notably, there's no drop down over here for the language selection because Flown doesn't have internationalization built in. We can add a home tab, we can click on a tab, and we get some home. And yesterday, I added this. Text and an emoji on here, and I thought, let's make the font a bit bigger. So I did, and I added that font change. I'll show you where I added it onto the home container build view method. Right here it is. Right. And then I went, all right, let's create a new file. What? What? Why is all my text like white now and in a giant font? Where does this form live? Is it a child of the home container? No. No, it is not. So how has it inherited something from up the view tree and then gone, how's it inherited something from a sibling in the tree? It's supposed to inherit from the parent, right? So there's something very wrong there. Maybe the maintainers have responded to my report about this yet. I've not had the chance to have a look yet, but this is what I encountered. So I'm like, well, that's a bit strange. So for instance, the form, right, is here. And I've got no text styling on this build view method, right? But suddenly I've got this. So there's strange issues like that. There's more strange issues as well. So if we open an image file and then we look just here, and I'm going to take a screenshot of this and then zoom into it so you can see what I'm talking about here. Right. You see there's this little purple line at the top here. Where's that coming from? And you see over here, there's this little grey line here. Where's that coming from? Because nowhere have I specified a purple border. Right? I specified a purple background to the image, but I'm filling the view with the image. So there's some strange rendering issues. I'm sure these are like little small niggly things which I'm sure can probably be fixed. They're not like deal breakers, but they're just niggly and annoying, and you have to go, oh, where? These are the kind of things that you don't want to encounter when you're trying out UI libraries, right? You just want stuff to work. Now I know that these things are all complicated and there's 1,000 different ways they can go wrong and everything like that, but this is just an experience and a sort of review of where we got to. So, we can open images and we can open some text files. Again, they've all got the wrong font size over here on the left. I can select something over here and I can select a different thing over here and I can go to these and the state is maintained, which is good because it didn't reload the file or anything like that. So it does that very well. I was happy about that. There's also like other weird bugs with the event system. So when I click this, like I'm clicking in the gutter here, right? And then I'm dragging the mouse left and I'm selecting something that I shouldn't be able to select, right? It's bleeding the event, like on mouse down event, is bleeding through to an adjacent view, which should be clipped to the container that it's in. But it's not. It's very strange. So we can see using the inspector, which is kind of neat, this inspector thing. We can see here that this... Huh! Look, did you see that when I opened the inspector, the font size went back to what it was supposed to be? That's amusing. Okay, I hadn't noted that before. That's quite funny, that is. Look, so we go home and then we go new. Wait a sec, if I click inspect, why does inspecting it change it? What? That really shouldn't happen. There's definitely some kind of strange bug there. I'm sure they'll fix it. But anyway, I was talking about this. So there's like an element here, this path element, right? Which is, yeah, it's kind of weird because it's got all the other things that are behind here. Like it's showing me all of the other elements from that form that's not even visible at the moment, which is kind of what you expect, but when you hover over things like this, you don't really expect to see the hidden things like that. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I'm trying to focus on this path thing that's like too big, but it's focusing something else. So the inspector's not working properly anyway. Yeah, so, some issues. We did get somewhere with it though, and it's not terrible. So my feeling is, nah, that's my feeling. Yeah, okay. Back to the spreadsheet. So I've updated some of this. No, there's none of this. No, there's no discoverability. Yeah. ID autocomplete was there. Discoverability. Discoverability. It's like, I suppose it's okay. But like, it wasn't too bad. Temporal coupling. What do I mean by this? There is some temporal coupling in that if you've got two lines of code and you reorder them, right, and the behavior changes, that means those two lines of code are temporally coupled. You must do one thing and then you do the other thing. Because it's not documented, the only thing I can do is guess or try and delve into the code by doing like trace logs and all this kind of thing. Because it's not documented, I don't know what order events and effects occur in. So I assume that if I use a signal to get something, then it will then trigger all of the effects that use that in the order that those effects initially ran. Right? So depending on how your application might do things, then you might run different effects first or last, right? So there is some temporal coupling going on with this, reactive systems. Some, but it's I don't know. It's not a known quantity. And so, for instance, let's have a look. I'll show you a bit of temporal coupling. Right. So when we close all the tabs, close all pressed, right? We have to do these things. We have to set the active tab to none, clear the list of tabs, and clear the list of documents, right? But if I rearrange these 3 lines of code in other orders, right, the system will break. Because if I try and clear the tabs without unsetting the active tab, then anything that was listening to that is going to try and do an unwrap on the active tab, and then it's not going to find a tab in the list of tabs, and so on. So there is temporal coupling in here, right? Which is not ideal. Yeah. So you end up with some temporal coupling. Temporal coupling is an odd source of bugs which is not immediately visible until you run the code, which is one of the reasons why I'm mentioning it. Yeah. GUI testability, non-existent. Right. If we do a search for test, we find some test, right? But very, very minimal. So if we open this in Find Windows, 127 occurrences of test, right? And it's testing low-level detail in the editor core. And some stuff to do with batching, and there's not many tests. What's also interesting is there's no tests in the examples, right? Ideally what I want to see is an example which shows you how to create like a hello world, but also has tests for the hello world thing of some description, as in a view should be created, an element should appear, and it should have the words hello world written on it, right? And when I click this button, some event is fired and then some event handler is triggered, Whether the event handler actually gets triggered or not, it doesn't really matter. What you're testing is that you've set up the fact that there should be an event handler on a button, and it should raise an appropriate event or call the appropriate closure or something like that, right? So yeah, and then you have to obviously simulate the click and things like that. But there's none of that in this. Yeah, there's none of that in this. And that worries me. I haven't actually tried to see whether all the tests work, but I'm kind of curious. I might just quickly try that now. Yeah, GUI testability. Let's tests. Occurrences of test. There were 127. Coverage. I don't know. It looks pretty bad. In fact, I'm going to write very bad. I haven't even looked at the coverage. But because I know that there's so much code there, and I know that there aren't any tests that test it, I'm going to say very bad without even looking at the coverage. If I wanted to like get more in depth into like, you know, what percentage of the code is covered, then, you know, I could run some coverage reports, but pretty certain it's going to be bad. So we're going to say very bad. Yeah. Primary driver is lapse, which intends. Oops. I don't know if this is still the case or not. If this is not the case, then someone please correct me in the comments, or I think you can leave a comment on the spreadsheet as well. I think there's a little comment. Yeah, there's comments, so you can leave comments on the spreadsheet. I'll paste the link to this into the chat now, so you can have a look at it if you're following along. Yeah, so multi-window. I'm not sure about the multi-window. I didn't look at that. I didn't look into this yet. There's some things on here which I've not looked into as much as other things. With Flow, I was more interested in how the state works, because that's the thing that was really a problem with the other two systems, the other two UI frameworks that I tried before, Freya and Visio. So my focus was to look at that. And then as I progressed things, then I started looking at other stuff. So, but I've updated quite a lot of this. I could probably update some more. You can suggest comments to the spreadsheet if there is something. So other thoughts, yeah, severe lack of documentation, no getting started book, no documentation for signals effects. You have to look at the documentation for Leptos to understand what they are, which I didn't like. There's no real documentation on how you're supposed to do layout, sizing and styling. Floem uses another crate to do it. I haven't looked at the documentation for that other crate. There should be just like an example of like how you do things, like, you know, with some diagrams to say when you do a flow thing, and with grid and a column, this is how they're sort of arranged, and here, this is what padding is, and this is what borders are, and this is what margin is, and here's how they affect each other, and this kind of thing. Probably some of it comes from like the CSS sort of web style layout systems, but it's not clear. There's some odd rendering issues, event bleed through issues, which I discussed. Some elements don't behave quite as expected. They're not bad overall, and you can probably create your own views and do it, but without a documentation on how you're supposed to create views, it becomes a bit tricky to create your own views if you don't like the ones that are already there, right? The developers have been very helpful. A couple of them have suggested changes to my example, pointed me in the right direction when I got stuck a couple of times. And my overall thought about its suitability for complex dynamic desktop apps is passable unless you need internationalization. Overall feeling passable. More success than with Visit or Freya when it came to having state per tab. So overall, you know, it's not bad, I suppose. I mean, it's not bad. Like, it's not bad, but it's not great either. What I want is one that's great and just works and is nice and doesn't leave me searching and has good documentation and has good testability and so on. And yes, I want the moon on a stick. But I don't think I'm going to get it. Anyway, so in the last video, we're going to move on. We're going to add a new. New column, new entry. Here we go. Okay. Can we? Oh, I don't like the way it does that. Why is it done this? Thank you very much. Right. Okay, so what's the next one we're going to look at? Yeah, so someone in the last video left a comment and said, have a look at this one. MakePad, which has got a very strange name. MakePad framework, MakePad Studio, and you can make UIs with it apparently. Yeah, so let's add it to the list. MakePad. Okay, so repo is that one. Docs. You know, we'll just go through it and have a look and just make observations as we go through. And these are just observations as someone who's never encountered it before, who has some requirements that need to be met, right? Just, you know, the requirements, the thing I'm going to use to try and do that. Right. So let's try and tick off some of these things on here. Is there an intro video? Well, Discord channel, most recent talk. Yeah, I suppose there is one. Okay, we could probably watch this. I'm not going to watch it. We're not going to watch it now, obviously, but we'll put the link in here. Status. Well, it's got 250 forks, and it seems to be being worked on. Yeah, even today, active. And then, you know, does it have a version? Now, there is a crate for this. I quickly looked at this earlier. It says it consists of multiple crates, but the top level crate is MakePad widgets, right? Which is this one. I suppose probably. Do I need another link? Yeah, maybe I'll put that there. Because it says see this documentation here, right? Or maybe documentation. Yeah, it's API docs. Where's the crate level? Where's the crate level documentation that tells you what the crate is? It should be somewhere, but it's not there. Okay, so we don't really know. I'll put that there. It's active, but I'm trying to work out whether it is experimental by looking at the version number. So it's not 1.0 yet. And it says it's under heavy development, so I guess it's experimental. Yeah. Runtime. Yeah. So it said where is it? Building and running. WASM. Yeah, we're going to have a problem with this already. You might have noticed that I am using Windows. Right, so it says rendered on the GPU. So I don't know what's doing the rendering. Let's have a quick look at the dependencies in the where's the repo for MakePad widgets? Is this MakePad thing here really that? Source? Oops. Repository. Is that this one? I'm not. See, it's kind of weird when you have a crate called one thing and your repo is called something else. It makes you wonder whether you're looking at the same thing. I'm sure there's probably reasons for that, but let's look at dependencies, see if we can work out what it uses. No. We've got some experiments, workspace members. And it says there was multiple crates, but the top level crate is that. Prerequisites, I don't really care about any of that. Okay, let's have a look at this. And it's got MakePad platform. Aye. So it takes me to the same repo for the crate. So sure, you can create multiple crates from the same repo, but it would be nice if the link on here went to the actual source code that was used to build this crate. So maybe this is a crate here, right, called MakePad widgets, and maybe this is the platform one, right? I don't know, I'm guessing. Let's look at this. So trying to work out if we can see if it's got. Yeah. I did read somewhere that it uses. Yeah, it says it runs the GPU, but I don't want to know. I want to know if it does all that work or it's using some back end like winit or something like that to do it. We're just going to have to put in own/native ? I guess when we look at the dependency tree, when we try and build an example, right, we can look at the cargo dependency tree. We can have a look in there. Yeah. So I was reading this, and it said, at the moment we only support Mac and web. Now this is a problem for me, because I use Windows. Why do I use Windows? Because I'm an electronic engineer. And most of the tools, you know, I do hardware and software. You know, I have to use things like oscilloscopes and stuff like this. And do you think you're going to find software for an oscilloscope for OS X? No. No, you're not. It's only on Windows. And this is the case with many other little hardware random things that I use. So I have to use Windows. I'm not a fan of Windows. I'm not a fan of OS X either. And I'm definitely not a fan of Linux. And yeah, I'm not going to get into that. No. I'm using Windows, and that's it. So if I can't run this, it's already dead to me. All right, I'm trying to create a desktop app that runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Cross-platform desktop app. So we're going to download it and we're going to try it anyway, right? We're just going to see what happens, because maybe this is out of date and they've added support and now it works. I don't know. Sometimes this happens. So I don't know. Okay, let's clone this repo. I suppose we have to look to see whether the license fits for the usage as well. Oh yeah, here it's got this. It says Rust that compiles to OS X, Metal, Windows DX11 and Linux. See, this bit of information would be nice somewhere in here. That's where I read it. I knew I read it somewhere. So I think it uses its own like native stuff. Which is interesting. Okay. Let's check the license. What license does it use? MIT license. Fine. We're good then. Occurrences of test. Yeah, well, we'll have a look in a minute, won't we? Code. Right. Copy that. Get this. What are we doing? Libraries, Rust. Yeah, probably there's a better way of organising all this stuff, but there we are. Because some libraries, you know, they might have multiple different languages in them. Libraries, Rust. Alright, so we cloned it. Let's go cargo build. And we'll see what happens. Let's see how many dependencies we get. 143. That's not bad. We'll open it up in the IDE while we're waiting. Oh dear. Well, we've got errors. You know, I mean, they did say it might not work on Windows. And I am running this in MSys2 on Windows as well, so... The other ones worked. As in the last 3 that I tried, they worked. So that doesn't bode well, does it? Okay, let's try and open it in the IDE. You know, we're off to a bad start here. We're off to a bad start. What is it called again? MakePad. That one. Do I trust it? Not really. Okay, so it had 239 dependencies when I did this. Right, we're waiting for it to index some stuff. Right, while it's doing that, I like the fact that there is a self-contained example with a cargo TOML file, as I've mentioned previously when I was looking at some of the other frameworks. This is useful because it shows you exactly what you need in order to make it work, which is good, as opposed to having to dig through this TOML file and go through all its feature list to try and work out what features you need to use to make the example run. So there's some form of structure in the example file as opposed to just a main file, which I suppose is which is good. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see what happens if we try and run it. 85 dependencies for the Hello World example. That's good, that is. Some of the other ones have got they've got ridiculous amounts of dependencies. So I made a note of this. So for instance, Freya, the widget gallery has 476 dependencies. That is a lot of crates to have security vulnerabilities and to audit and so on. And, surprisingly, even though it said it doesn't work on Windows yet, it worked. Quite how you get rid of this, I don't know. Because there's no close button on the window. Okay. Oh, I made it full screen. Can we? Yeah, okay. So there is a window there, but there's no controls on it. So we'll just Alt F4 it. That's not ideal. I mean, sure, it's nice that you can have a window and use all the thing, but you know, I want my native like drag title bar, close button, icon, minimize, maximize. You know, these buttons, and also a way of bringing up the system menu. These are very important things. Okay, so let's see if we can find the widget gallery. That's Floem. Hello widgets. Is there like a widget gallery thing? Of course, there's a chat GPT. Ooh, very 2024. UI Zoo. That was a README file. One each of all the UI elements. Okay, so UI Zoo. This is what we want. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right. Let me see what I'm looking at. Right. So I've got some controls. Good, so we can do it, and we've got a title bar, title, but it appears in the top center, which is not really standard. The title should normally appear top left. And I guess they've had to implement their own ones of these, but because they don't look the same as these ones. Right, and let's just bring up Notepad for a comparison. Native, sorry, not native, native, and then MakePad. And then, yeah, okay. And let's bring up, I don't know, Paint. Here's another window. Right, so icon, title, left justified, window controls. That's what I want to see. But what we actually see is this. Okay. Alright, so let's have a look at this. So, buttons. Have we got ones that we can sort of turn on and off? Oh. I don't know what's going on there. The drop down's not working. Why is... I mean, why is there a slider inside a button? That feels a bit weird. Okay, fine. Typography, some stuff. Views. This is the kind of stuff that was missing from Flow. I'm having problems remembering the names of all these things now. This is what was sort of missing. So it didn't have like what am I trying to say? It didn't have examples of how the layout system worked. Rounded views, buttons. Okay, here, so clicky clicky. Clicky clicky. Funny. And yeah, this is another thing that I had with Floem. There's like weird defaults. Let me show you an example of a weird default. Right, I've got a button, and I can do. Yeah, this is a button. This is a default button, right? And I can do text selection inside the button. And I find that to be a weird default. Like, sure, it's text, yeah, but I don't know whether the defaults should be selectable on these things, right? And like here again, it's like, it's text, sure, but I want to be able to specify whether the user can select from it, because it's weird. So the problem with that weird default is that if, say, you want to drag a tab, you end up, selecting text instead. Weird defaults, right? Anyway, going back to MakePad. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for joining us on the stream. Use the Rick branch with the latest code. Yeah, I can probably do that. I can switch over in a bit. Is there... Okay, I'm just going to sort of comment on that. It's a bit weird to have to know that the default branch is the one I'm supposed to be using. A branch that's not the default. The default one is the one that you expect users to use to start with, not some Rick branch or some experimental branch or something like this. But okay, good to know that there are some newer code and some of my issues might be fixed. So icons, flat things, yeah, these are good for toolbars. Well, that's good. Styling, yay, yeah, we're all good there. Text input, oh, let's try some text input tests. This will be fun. Inline label, right. This one perhaps. The offset of these is not right. This is this one, and 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 this. So they need to be lined up a bit better, but it's an example. So secret? It's not secret though. Shouldn't it be like this? Oh, I'm trying to do things with the keyboard that didn't work then. Right, I'm pressing Shift Home and Shift N to do text selection, and it didn't do anything. Let me press Control A, because this is a pretty much sort of standard platform default to select all the text. They've got that, but they don't have Shift Home and Shift N for text selection. It's not a deal breaker, they can probably add it, Okay, what happens if you expand it? Okay, what about... I kind of want to know what happens where you've got a text box which doesn't expand like this and scrolls left and right. Simple one-line text box. No fancy characters. What? So I can't paste an emoji in it? Is that what you're saying? I don't think this is... It doesn't do what it says. I can change this. Okay, so this isn't up to date. I guess this is what they want to do, but they haven't done it yet. It's less confusing if these didn't exist. Because you see them there, and then you assume they work, and if you see a screenshot of it, people assume that they work. But then when they come to use it and try it, it doesn't work. So you're raising people's expectations and then lowering them. And when you lower people's expectations after the fact, it's not good. Alright, labels. Sure. Pixel shaders, sliders. The drag handle's not in the right place. Or wait, oh I see. This is like you can click it anywhere. Right. That's a bit weird. Okay. This one is probably more like what I'm used to. Precision, yeah, okay, step. Let's look at this. Right, the step one, if I click on the left-hand side of it here, I expect it to step once to the right. Why did it go left then? Right, if I click one of these to the left, I expect it to go left. I expect it to go right when I click to the right. That's my expectation of how sliders are supposed to work. I mean, here's a scroll bar. You click above it, yeah? Oh, this one actually scrolls directly to where you clicked. So this scroll bar doesn't work how I expect it to either. That's interesting. Okay, let's try this example here. I've got a scroll bar and I click below it. And this is my expectation of how a scroll bar works. You click beneath it and it goes one step downwards and one step upwards, right? If I drag it, it lets me move it to where I want it, right? Clicking here shouldn't take me all the way down to the bottom. That's my expectation. Okay, weird scroll bars. So, okay, let's look at the drop down. What happens if the window is small? All right. I've got to find the drop down now. Drop down. Here we go. Because this is always a good test with drop downs. What happens if it doesn't fit? And this happens frequently in pop-up dialogues. Right? So if you've got like a small dialogue, which is about, I don't know, say this big. Let me find the drop down again. Oh no. Here it is. Right. So it doesn't appear in front of the window. It's not an overlay. It's inside the window. Right. In this situation, you want the drop down. You want as much of the drop down visible as possible, as many items, and okay, there's some weird text behavior, selection behavior going on here, because I'm pressing cursor down while the list is open, and my expectation is that the second item should be displayed in that little box. But that does not happen. Okay, I'm seeing a few things in here that I do like though. Where'd the drop down? So if I press cursor down here, I expect it to show me this, and when I press space, I expect it to select the item. What happens if I hover over something and press space? Nothing. What about pressing return? Nothing. Pressing space if you've hovered over something should probably select it, right? And keyboard navigation in here is, it could be better. So you've got up, down on the drop down itself. This drop down is resizing. It would be nice to see one that didn't resize itself to the length of the element. So it's like a fixed width one that is as wide as the longest value. Other things that often go wrong in drop down boxes is when you've got a long thing in it, like a path for instance. What happens when the path is too big to fit in the drop down box? Can you control the width of the drop down box? These are all sort of questions that my brain is having. Okay, next thing, file tree. Good, there's a file tree. Good. Oh, it gets a big tick there. Look, tree view. Tree view. Look, none of the other ones have had this. Like, yes. Finally. Okay, so let's fill in this. Yes. Typing to search. So I'm on this, and I want to go Option E. So I'm pressing O, and nothing happens. I'm clicking here and pressing O, and nothing happens. So no. No text search. Radio buttons. We saw some radio buttons. Sliders, yes, but clicking left, right doesn't work as expected. Text labels, yeah, we saw those. Yeah, we saw those. What I wanted is a toggle button. So with a toolbar, like when bold is on, right? Here's an example of a toolbar button. When bold is on, it stays on like this. I don't know about this yet. I'm going to make a. We'll have a look. Where are the buttons? So there was these. There was these flat ones, but there's no example of a toggling one. Not sure. Okay, radios. Do we have radios somewhere? Drop down, file tree. I mean, file trees are one thing, but other trees are other things. So I want trees of my own data structure, not necessarily just trees of the file system. So we need to look into this example to see how it works. Folding things, that's useful. This is useful for when you've got like a list view, for instance, and you want to expand the content of one of the rows so that you can see more detail. I expect to be using something like that. So there's some markdown stuff, I suppose. Not sure what all this is. Maybe. Incomplete, perhaps. You know, and if all these things are wrong, please let me know in the comments and we can come back up and update this list. Right, images. Yeah. Images. I'm sure I had images somewhere on my list. SVG support, image support. Yeah, there it is. Yes. Not sure if these are SVGs. We'll have to look at that. Checkboxes. Yeah, here we go. Let's have a look. What happens if I press tab now? Absolutely nothing. So, is there any focus or keyboard support? Keyboard navigation. I'm going to say no until I know that there is. Because I haven't found anything yet. What? Okay, let me just talk about keyboard support for a moment. Right, here's a spreadsheet. Right, you spend all day long wandering around, clicking on things, and trying to get to menus by pressing like Alt F, for instance, but it brings up a web browser one instead because this is in a web browser. But you need keyboard support to do your job, basically. It's inefficient to be using the mouse and clicking on things and moving the hand from the keyboard to the mouse and the keyboard and the mouse. And this is especially true in productivity apps. Right? If you've got some like mobile phone app, then it's different. You're clicking on things. So sure, you don't need keyboard support for most mobile phone apps. You can plug keyboard into mobile phones. You can get Bluetooth keyboards, right? And you should be able to navigate your mobile phone app using tabs, tab key on your keyboard and so on. And you should also be able to use the screen reader to do it as well, right? So yeah, lack of keyboard support is disconcerting at this point. Not sure. I'll leave it blank. Radio boxes, let's have a look at these. So we've got radio boxes here. Yeah, sure. So okay, maybe it does have these flat ones, like at the buttons, media ones. How do you know which one of these is selected? I think that's a bit broken. Like, use your right cursor key to show the next slide. So, in one hand, there isn't keyboard navigation. We're just literally just talking about keyboard support, and then we find this random thing that makes me want to use a keyboard. But why doesn't it have like a little hover over thing over here to allow you to get to it? I don't really care about the slides too much, but it's a bit weird. Interesting. Good. I'm liking this. I mean, there's close buttons. They don't work here, but is there state here? No. It'd be nice to see one of these with some state in it, but okay. So yeah, button, yes, system menu, radio buttons. We had radio buttons, didn't we? They were up here. Yes. Combo boxes. Combo boxes is like an editor with a little down thing, which lets you choose some things, but also lets you type into it as well. I don't recall seeing one of those yet. I do find this MakepadUI zoo thing to be a bit annoying to navigate. It would be nice if it used its own dock layout and had a list of the sections and you could click the sections and then it showed you the section. In the same way as like this one does, for instance. You know. because scrolling up and down through this to find out what the examples are, sure, it's all well and good that you can do it, but it's a bit annoying to navigate. So I was trying to find a drop-down combo box thing. Yeah, and this is another thing that's, because of the way that this layout is, I'm trying to scroll up to get to these things, and then I get to this, and then this is now scrolling, and then I have to scroll it to the bottom, which isn't my intention. So that's a bit annoying. Still looking for the drop down. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a combo box, because it's a combination of like an editor and a drop down that you can type into. So no. Lists and tables. Can we see a table in here anywhere? I don't think I saw a table. I can't find either lists or tables. No, I'm going to say, until I know otherwise. No, no, no. Yes, don't know if the content is dynamic, because what am I saying about dynamic tabs? So in Visio, it looked like there was a usable tab control, but it turned out not to be usable. It required that all the content for the tabs was known when you instantiate the tabs, the tab bar and the tab container. It was not dynamic. So we don't know whether this is dynamic, so we need to delve into that a little bit more. Toolbars, no. But you can make a toolbar probably with some of the elements that are already there. But it doesn't. I didn't see any sort of like example that showed that. Let's have a look in here. So we've got UI Zoo. This apparently is a good example. I read this earlier. Let's run this, if it runs. Apparently this is a synthesizer or something. Oh, it actually does work as well. That's kind of interesting. Sure. It's not really got... What's this? What does this do? What do these do? Nothing. Settings. Did I break it? No. There's some weird clipping things going on here, look. And the same with these presets, like the bottom of them are clipped. MakepadUI. Curious. Interesting example. There wasn't anything in there that I wanted to know more about in terms of like the GUI controls and everything. It might be useful to look into this more to see how the state and all this kind of stuff is structured. So, for instance, it had that sequencer thing. So, where does it store the state for the sequencer? And it's got some state which it loads and saves. So yeah, maybe it's be interesting to look at. Let's look at another example. So I'm still on the, is it worth trying to build my requirements in this phase. I'm just exploring it a little bit. So yeah, Android apps and iOS apps. Sure. Oh. No compiling. So let's look. So, do we have any badges? No. Right, what am I talking about? Badges. So, for instance, Floem and also Visio. We'll go to this one. Right. There's some badges. Can you add some badges, please? The important one is this build passing one, which will be red at the moment because there's some code in here which doesn't compile when you do cargo build. And there's also examples that don't build. So part of the build for like any project is that it should build all the crates and all the examples and all the documentation and everything when you do a pull request, right? This is sort of like my base expectation for like any crate. Without that little green badge, I've got no idea if any of the code has even tried to be compiled at all by anything, including a human. So at the moment, we can assume that, without that badge, and assuming is the mother of all evils, right? Without that little badge, I'm assuming that nobody is compiling the code. Which is somewhat worrying. What's this deployments? No, this is just five years ago. So, right, so yeah, that's not good. Why does it think there's a lot of WebAssembly code? Where does that live? There's some libs. What's this libs? Libs. Oh, what am I looking at here? Why? Okay, I'm a little bit weirded out by this. Is there a members lib/star or something that everything gets compiled? Workspace exclude. What are all these libs? Why do they live there? What are all these libs? In the stitch folder, what's this? WASM interpreter written in Rust. Is it just because there's loads of examples or something? Yeah. I'm not sure why I care about looking at WebAssembly files. I suppose it's interesting to know that there's some there, but that metric is kind of weird. But okay. What I really want to see is this. Rust. Like, hi. You know, native Rust. Sure, the WebAssembly examples and benchmarking, I'm not sure about that too much. Okay, let's have a look and see what else we can see of note. Contributors, 41. 41. Number of dependencies for the example. Yes, let's look at that again, because it was very low. And I'm going to make a note of what it was. Sorry, build. Hold on. I need to clean it to make it rebuild it. Where is it? I'm not quite sure why there's two there like that. That's weird. Oh, this is a bin. No. This Rust Rover UI is a bit funky sometimes. Like this cargo view. Right, now it's doing something. So we've got build, and now it's created a cargo thing, which I can now edit, and then I can go clean. No, apparently not. Okay. Let's go examples. What is it? UI zoo. We'll just try it here. The IDE is not helping me out there. Right. Cargo build. 85. That's good. That's a reasonable number of dependencies. Oh, that's going to get a green. That's going to get a happy green thing, that is. Okay. Let's go cargo tree. So it's using tiny skier, MakePad vector. Interesting. I do like the small amount of dependencies. And just for comparison, right? Libraries, Rust, Floem. Examples, and it was the widget gallery. Right. Yeah. Better. How much reinventing the wheel there is, I don't know. Because I was a little bit surprised to see libs base 64, for instance. Like, okay. And humour me here. Is there a test for this base 64 encoding? No. So how do we know it works, right? Right, let's just go to this. I think I used base 64 in my Vizier example. Oh, it's loading up the external libraries. Base 64. This one, tests encode, right? There's tests for this crate. So why is there their own base 64 encoder that's got no tests for it when there's already a crate out there that does base 64 encoding that, you know, works? I don't know. I'm kind of curious. It's used by the ironfish example. It's a bit weird, right? Is there some issue with the library for, you know, the license for this base 64 thing? No, it's got an MIT license. Why reinvent the wheel? Seems a bit odd. It's like, you know, base 64, not 5. Instead of this, like, why? Okay. Seems a bit weird. Okay, what else is in this libs thing? Some futures. Yeah. Yeah. Like, are there any tests? Let's do the search for test. There are some tests. $244 now. Where are these tests? Let's close that. Right, worryingly, most of the tests are not in the framework that I want to use. Most of the tests seem to be in this libs thing, right? The majority of them, 103, 31. So let's exclude those. Be nice if I could remove them from this. Oh, there we go. So 44 is the real number of tests. Let's just randomly have a, let's just try running 43 tests. Oh dear. 42. Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I see what you're saying with regards to the, it's might be a stripped one. But I don't think you should strip out the tests. Because how do you know that once you've stripped all the other code away, it still has its basic functionality, right? Yeah, the lack of tests is extremely disconcerting at the moment. It makes me wonder that if the framework has got no tests, how one is supposed to create tests for their own application that they're writing using the framework. So, for instance, if I look at a base 64 encoding library and I see there's tests in there, then it at least gives me some assurances that the developers are even thinking about tests and being confident that the system is going to do what it's supposed to do, what the crate is going to do what it's supposed to do. Right? Because if I'm depending on a crate which has got no tests, how can I be sure that my code, my system that I'm building with it is also going to work? Right? If I find a crate called base64 and I write a small little example which encodes something on the command line, I can write a test for my bit of code and not have to worry about the base64 encode and decode methods that I'm using. I don't have to retest those, right? But with this as it stands, I have no confidence whatsoever that any of the code works and that the onus is therefore on me to test the library's code when I ship my application, which is not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to trust the libraries, and you can't trust the library unless it's got tests. Yeah. Right. So, let's make a note of that, because it's very important. Journals. Flowing thoughts after a week. Meh. I'll come back to that and edit that. Let's look at MakePad. Concerns. No tests. Happy thoughts. Minimal dependencies. Yeah. Right. My next concern that we're going to look at. So there were about 44 tests basically, and I'm going to put bad, mostly untested. That's what it looks like. Coverage. Well, there's a lot of code in there. It's getting a very bad. Year created. I think it's 2019. I'd have to go back and check the... I'm picking 2019 because I saw the GitHub thing, but really I probably should look at the initial commit. I can't remember how to do that. Git show initial commit. There is the thing to do it. How to show the first commit, yeah. Okay. Yeah, 2019. Okay, let's see if we can fill in some of these other things. So, native file picker, Floam had a yes there, in fact. So one of the things that I need to do, which Floam, I believe, has an example for, yeah, this one. Right. One of the things that we need to do is what Floam does. It looks like Floam wraps a crate called RFD. So if what is this thing called? MakePad? MakePad, yeah. If MakePad doesn't have support for it, then we'd have to add our own support using RFD. So selecting file, you get a native selector, right? Selecting multiple files, right? Selecting folder with select folder on the end, select multiple folders, and save file. And then you've got save type, you know, that kind of thing. This is what we need. Does it have that? That's the question. File. Zip files, shell. No, that's an import. We've not even looked at how any of the code is written yet either at this point. Okay, I don't see any support for like file selectors or anything like that, so I'm assuming that the answer there is no. So let's say no. Error dialogues. Let's search for dialogue. Oh wait, hold on. What's this? Maybe there is one. Wait, what? Where's this? Source platform CX API. File dialogue. Where's this live? In platform. Okay. Is there an example that uses this? Oh. Wait a second. Platform file default. No, I don't want to do that. I want to find usages of this. MacOS app file dialogues. Okay, I'm gonna change this to be maybe C file dialog. But there's no code which uses it, so I'm control clicking on this and it shows me all the usages of it, right? But there's no example that uses it, so I can't see how it's supposed to work in the real world. There's also What is this? CX API. What is CX API anyway? It's kind of weird. And then there's no usages of this. But there is if we search for it. Hold on. Oh, wait. Is it because it doesn't experiments? Why? Oh, is it because the workspace excluded it? Hold on. Right. Okay, so the IDE didn't find it because it's disabled here. Right, and now it finds the usage of it, which is in this experiment thing. What is this? Does it? I have no idea what this is. It's going to delete all the files on my computer. No. Please don't. Okay, so it doesn't compile, so it's hard to know what it is. There's no docs on the main thing here, and there's no README file. No idea what this is. It would be nice to have a README file in, like, these. You know, even if they're not finished, it'd be nice to have a little README file. Just something in it. This is a thing that does this. Yes, I know it's under heavy development. Time and all that, you know. Yeah, hold on. What is this? Graph. It doesn't build. Okay, well, I guess we won't be looking at graph then. Nope. Why is... What's going on here? Oh, right, the image... Oh, maybe it was the image viewer that was causing the problem. Hold on. No, they both cause problems. Okay. Well, we won't be looking at those then. What do we think it did? I don't know. Yeah, I suppose at some point we need to look at all this stuff. Right, so like Qt and Freya, Deoxys and all that kind of stuff, it uses macros. Now, let's do the discoverability test. Let's go to the hello world thing. Let's go to this one, in fact. Right. So What I don't want to have to do is go to the documentation to find out the things that I can type here, right? No suggestions when you press Control Space, right? Let's put a typo here and press Control Space. No suggestions, right? I immediately dislike this. Contrast and compare, if you will. One that's not done using macros. So if we switch to the Phloem one, for instance, right, and we go to our Rust code, where we create a view, right, and I do the same thing, right? I was here, you know, doing this flow down thing, or you know, any one of these things where you could potentially use it. Look here, color container, like color cont. No idea. Did I make a typo? Is it right? Is it going to fail to compile? Is that too late for me? Yes. And then contrast and compare to Rust code, Control Space, and you get things that you can do. Similarly, if I'm here and I go dot, there's stuff I can do. Right? Stuff I can do. Right? So it makes it very discoverable if you've got Rust code, or if your macro system is built in such a way that the IDE can show you completions. Maybe there's a plugin for the IDE, but I'd rather not to have to even install one anyway. With native Rust code, you don't need any of that. So, because I can't discover it using my IDE, I'm then left with two options. One, trawl the code. Two, look at the documentation. Let's go look at the documentation. So, yes, here we go. And this is already a jarring experience. You know, I'm writing code. I want to do some stuff. I want to make it a font size, font family, you know, and then I can look at this and I can see that it takes a style value, and I'm in my IDE and everything's flowing and I'm just creating, right? Contrast that experience with me attempting to change the font on, say, I don't know, let's run this and then try and change something specific. And we'll just contrast the experience, the developer experience. So I've got this bit of text here. Inheritance mechanisms in the DSL. I want to make it red. How do we expect to do that? Right? Okay. Contrast that with, say, this, where I just go, oh, sorry, wrong bracket, dot color red. Done. You know, maybe just for fun, we can do the same thing in Visio. Here's some code that I was doing before. Well, we've got a view somewhere. Here's a label. Color red. Right, two other competing GUI frameworks. I'm able to immediately go to a label element or a bit of text or something and just change the color on it. Right. You know, the kind of thing that you might be asked to do as your first day at a new job. Oh, it's supposed to be red. Go change it. You're like, oh, all right then. Go change it. Right. This is supposed to be red. I've never encountered this before. It's not Rust code. So now I have to learn something else which isn't the programming language that I'm using. Wait, what? I'm learning something else which isn't the programming language that I'm using. DSLs. Like... yeah. Right, how do we change this? So I've got a zoo header view P. And it's the third one. I mean, can I put... You see, I've got no idea what I can do. And this is why in the discoverability, it gets a bad uses DSL. No IDE completion. And it gets it in red. Oh, IDE autocomplete. Let's say no. DSLs. All DSLs have pretty much all DSLs have the same problem. Apparently, with Freya, which also uses macros, they have a similar problem, but apparently they've solved it in 0.6, and your IDE can be used to do auto-completion and discoverability inside the macro. So, where is it? Freya. New window. So let's bring up one of the examples. There was like a widget gallery or something. Can't remember where it is. But anyway, let's just pick up a random example. Right. So this has got a DSL, right? This is Freya, and I have the same problem here. There is something interesting that's going on here in that my IDE seems to know about some of this stuff. And I can click into it, but I still don't have any I can't see what other properties I can add. Right? This is kind of similar to when you're doing web development, for instance, and you've got an inspector, right? Create a new node, right? And if I press D and then do autocomplete, it doesn't do anything, right? Here we've got the CSS, right? I can press Control Space in here and it gives me a list of all the CSS properties that I can possibly change, which is good because I can discover CSS this way, right? Similarly, the properties that I can set are also displayed here. right? So knowing what you can do, the options that you've got, and then being able to go to some documentation about the thing that you just found in the list is a good way of being able to discover the environment that you're in. So we still don't know how to make the text red. We have to look at some documentation. Where top level creates MakepadUI for explanation. Right. So we've got this README, and I know it's got this live design thing here, but honestly, I don't care about this right now. Maybe it's a big feature and maybe it's really useful, but this isn't that kind of feature. Isn't the thing that makes me choose a UI framework over any other UI framework. Just so that we're clear on that. This kind of stuff is what makes me use it, and the quality of them. 2 low-level crates, caveats. I'm trying to find documentation on like the DSL. Now it does mention a DSL somewhere. It's not a link. DSL. Where is the DSL documentation? Overview, sure. Build it. Right, there's this MakePad Studio thing, but sure, I could run it and maybe my life would be easier, but it doesn't detract. You know, I still want to find the documentation somewhere, so this the fact that it mentioned about we intend to add support for Windows and Linux very soon. This looks like it needs to be updated, because there's some documentation here which mentions PC. Does this mean Windows or does it mean Linux? Or should it be Mac OS X, Linux, Windows? I don't know. I mean, the slashes aren't this way around on a PC; they're the other way around. Still trying to find documentation. Quick reference. I don't really care about the. Running all the Android stuff. I don't really care about any of that stuff yet. Cargo check builds. So it needs to run this tool to do it. What does this do? I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious as to what it does. I'm getting distracted from finding the documentation, but I just want to run this to see if it works. No. There's probably some prerequisites. Yeah, I did that. Does it? Can't find create for core. I mean, not sure what check all is going to be doing. Maybe I don't care about the other the other targets. Can I just run or check just one platform? I don't know. I've got a high-end system, don't worry about that. All the cores. Yeah, I ain't worried about that. But it didn't work. Probably because the prerequisites on there. But I don't really want all the prerequisites. Right, still trying to find documentation. Where is the documentation for the DSL? Let's look at the MakePad repo and search for DSL. Right. Live compiler. We've got this. No. No. Where's it going to be? Oh yeah, there's this thing. I tried opening this in my mobile phone and it wasn't happy. Yeah, it caused Firefox on my mobile phone to crash. Let's just go DSL here. Nothing. And my boss is getting angry with me now because I still haven't changed the colour of that bit of text to red. Why? What am I even looking at here? What is this? I mean, this might be the IDE that they're talking about, right? Which, you know, uses some of the controls and things that we might want to use and doesn't look totally hideous, which is good. But yeah, I didn't notice some of these had a funny... Right, they've got this thing on the right-hand side here. You know, it's nice that it runs in your web browser and everything like that, the WebAssembly. But I still haven't found the documentation. Where do we expect to see it? Overview. So it says, right, the styling is described in DSL. DSL. Examples. And if I go to documentation, can we search DSL? Where's the... I've got no idea. This isn't going well. This isn't going well. Like... I'm curious as to why 5,100 people have starred this, and they might be building things with it. Look, there's 250 forks of it. So, like, who's doing what with it? Isn't there a dependence thing that you can get to? Where is it? Insights, dependency graph. I can never remember where this is. Insights, dependency graph. So there's a bunch of MakePad things, right? Oh, dependents, not dependencies. Zero. Does that mean no one's using it? So, like, when you go to Slint on GitHub, for instance, and you do the same thing, because I asked about this in the in one of the Rust things, right? So there's, you can see people that are depending on it, and somehow it magically works it out. I don't know how it works it out. I mean, we could take a random look at one of these things and see why this repo depends on it. Is it because of this? And because I don't really know how that system works, but I'm guessing that it's not going to show any dependencies because maybe the name of the crate doesn't match the name of the repo, and therefore it doesn't know there's a crate there. So you can't get a list of people that are using it from GitHub. I don't know. Maybe let's search all of GitHub for this. All of GitHub. Widget sample widgets. Well, yeah. And let's just do the same thing for Freya, for instance. Oops. And maybe we can pick Tommel. Can we do it? No. Oh, what happened there? Was it like that? Right. It found that, you see. So it doesn't look like anybody on GitHub's really using it, which is a little bit strange. So like, why are there 5,100 stars for it? Who are these? Like, it's a bit strange. It's a bit strange. There's only 100 most recently pushed forks. There are 5. So why does this say 250? No one. It doesn't look like anybody's using it. Contributors, community. Do I have a thing about community? Only 5 active forks. Can't find any examples on GitHub with a MakePad widget cargo dependency. Yeah, I'll leave that there for now. Yes. Still can't find the documentation. Like, where's the documentation for this DSL? I think I might give up. Do I have to join a Discord server and ask? Let's try joining the Discord server and asking. See if anyone see if anyone knows. There is a Discord channel. Okay. Let's go. I am indeed human. Right. Yeah. Okay. be nice to be able to pull this out onto a different thing. I'm just going to quickly ask, does anyone know where the DSL documentation is? There. Yeah. Check project Robius. What's Robius? What is this? What is this? I don't know why I've been told to look at this. I mean, is Robius like Crux? I don't know, because open source, decentralized, community-driven effort to do multiple platform application development in Rust, which is sort of the exact same thing that Crux does, which is what I'm using in my code, which, yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I actually wrote any of my own code for the actual project that I'm trying to run on. We're almost forgetting what this looks like. You know, we've got our planner multi-platform app where I've got a command line app and I'm writing a GUI app for it, you know, and I could equally write a Rust app for it, an Android app for it using some random framework, UI framework. And what we're trying to find is a GUI that I can use to do it. Yeah. I don't know where the DSL documentation is. Let me also share this link. Also, here's the GUI comparison spreadsheet from today's investigation. Yeah. Maybe it's in here. Yeah, I'll have a look at that Robius thing. The point with Crux though is that it's agnostic to the GUI. You don't even need a GUI. The point is that you've got a testable back end to your application which you can run the test against really fast, and then you have a UI which interacts with the back end, right? Using a message system with effects and all this kind of stuff, right? So my goal was to find a GUI system which I can use in conjunction with crux, or maybe not crux, maybe something like it. But I can certainly have a look at that Robius thing. I'll bookmark it and add it to my list. I think that's what they called it. Thanks for the link. Still looking for the documentation for the DSL. I'm not sure if anyone is in the Discord server. There's been no responses to my messages yet. They might be on different time zones and so on. Or might just not be looking at the screen, which is more likely. MakePad example simple crate. Where's the source to this? There's no repo. It's always very worrying when there's no repo for a crate. Re-exports to 2 low-level crates. I don't care about the low-level crates. I just want to know where the DSL is. So let's look at this MakePad Studio and see if this has any documentation. Like, just don't know where it would be. Don't know where it would be. Let's look for, I don't know, text maybe? Paragraph? I don't know. I mean, that's the stupid thing about, you can't just search for like P, right? So what I'm trying to do is make this red. But I'm struggling to find something that I can even search for because it's called P. Right, it's just, sure, I've got the API, you know, but like if I was, okay, let's maybe look for this macro. No. So there's no documentation on the macro either. It's like, even if there was just a link here telling me where the documentation was, that would be helpful, because you see this macro, this live design thing, in like all of the examples and all of the apps and so on like this, right? So it would be nice if there was just some documentation somewhere which told you what on earth you can do. Like if I was to start creating an app myself, how would I even know what to type here? Right, I'm giving up on this until someone tells me where all the DSL stuff is. This is a non-starter for me at the moment. Yeah. yeah, I can't do anything with it. This gets a severe lack of documentation of, okay, I'm going to be nice. Easily accessible. Okay, let's say cannot find DSL documentation. Big red flag. Let's say decent looking widgets. Yeah, and I guess I'm going to have to do more investigation and testing it, but I can't test it because I haven't got any documentation. So what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do here? Yeah. It's like, sure, I can look at the examples, right? But I can't discover what I can do. Like, I want to know what I could do, can do, have to do in here. I've got no idea. Right, I mean, I can look at another one. Okay, let's look at another one. Main, no, app. So there's all this stuff, right? But like, where does this come from? How do I know that I can do a flow on a rounded view? Like, can we find rounded view? Does it have a list of properties or something like that? How does it even get created? Where does it come from? These are the questions that I've got in my head right now. I'm trying to find like the origin of rounded view. Is it this? It is this. Is it this? Yes. Right. Let's look at the. Let's bring up the structure. View, tool, windows, structure. And pull this over here. Right. Structure. Wait, what? It's got functions on it, but there's nothing about flow, but it's got rounded view, has got a view base. So we go down the rabbit hole. View. View base is view. Let's just search this for flow. No. You see, okay. We've got this thing. Where does this flow come from? And how do I know that this rounded view has got one? Yeah. Oh. MakePad architecture. Thanks. Right. I've been given a URL that's not. I didn't find a link to from the repo. okay. Right. Right, so we've got some documentation. Let's see if we can understand. I wonder where the source for this documentation is. I don't quite know. I don't really care about the live system at the moment. I'm just going to scan this to just get like familiar with it. DSL object. I'm not going to read every single thing. I'm just going to scan it first and then go back to what my brain deems is important. Stuff to do with inheritance. Sure. Oh, hooks. Wait, let me just cross-reference that with the thing that I was trying to change. Which was this line of text. So we've got equals is, and then we've got colons is. Uh-huh. So this is a field property. And this is an instance property. Don't know what the difference is between a field and an instance right now, but maybe it told us earlier. Yeah, there's some good stuff like behind the scenes that the end user won't see. Like the normal noob developer like me who comes along and just wants a UI framework. I appreciate all the stuff that's going on underneath the hood. But I'm just being the noob user that wants to try and use it. Okay, so there's a decent overview here, which is good. Is this up to date? That's what I'm wondering. Let's yeah. Do I even need to use a DSL? Can I just do it without the DSL? I'm trying to work out whether this is Rust code or whether it's the DSL code. It says Rust here, but you know, one of my options is to use Qt, and that uses like DSL stuff. You know, I'm not totally against using DSLs, but I don't like them as much as I like pure Rust. This is an interesting statement. MakepadUI DSL does not rely on a single giant interpreter, instead it is defined per widget. That's curious. That's an interesting statement. Huh. So given that the widget, each widget defines its own DSL, if we were to look at the button implementation, would we find anything? Where is that? Widgets, button. Well, there is some documentation there. That's interesting. Where? Is this the name of the button, or is this the name of the view? Where's the text for the button? The label. Oh right, so this is only just okay, fine. Hold on. Oh, it's like that. So label. I kind of expect to find the word label in here. It's a bit strange. I'm not sure what a walk is. Right. That's where it is, but where's... And there's text. See, what I'm trying to understand from this is how maybe it got renamed. Let's find a button. Okay, so it looks like it got renamed from label to being text, which is why I couldn't find label now. So this documentation is out of date, and this is probably supposed to be text here now. So given that, you can look for the properties of something inside the implementation of the view. So is there a view for like P? Is it paragraph? Is it HTML? What was that? What was this thing up here? Zoo header. Where's this? Oh, is this right? It's quite funky, isn't it, this? So it creates a thing that's based on a view which has these properties which you can set when you use one of these somewhere else. Fine. And then it's got this view thing here, and I'm guessing that these things here are based on a view implementation, but where's that? Is there a view? Yeah. Oh, there's P, look. View, well, maybe. Oh dear. I'm kind of curious to know at this point. Like, I started trying to change the color of this thing to red like a long time ago. Even after being pointed at some documentation and also knowing a tiny little bit about the DSL and where some of the code for it lives, I still cannot find what I can do with this P thing, or where the definition of this P thing is. Like, perhaps it's one of these. Why is it called a debug? But yeah, view debug. just kind of wanting to know how where this P lives. Like I found zoo header and I found zoo desk and I found view, but I don't know where this P comes from. Is this defined in here maybe? Oh, there's a theme. It's a label. Does this get used automatically from something? Did this use the theme? It did. That's where it came from, right. Wasn't expecting it to be in a theme, but fine. So we found it, so it's a label. Right, so if it's a label, what can you do with a label? Let's have a look. Properties for it. We've got a walk align padding area. Draw text. Like, let's just go back to this. So we've got text, which is setting this. Right, and then P was defined here. And color is defined on draw text. And that's what I thought, because I saw this here. And I was about to have a look at that. So maybe I can go draw text, color red. I don't know, because there's a color here. And I guess you can use brackets to do that, but what does a color look like? References to other things are other things. Oh, so let's try just using a hex thing. So this is this transparency at the end, and we're just assume it's red, green, blue. I don't know, but let's try going hash red, green, blue, something, and run it. And if it fails, we'll learn about how it fails. Oh my god, I made it red. Oh my god. Right. So this is my point. This exercise of trying to change that colour to red, right, forced me to learn about how the system works, where the documentation was, and all this kind of stuff, right? So if you were following along from the beginning, where I changed the colour like instantly in 2 other frameworks because they had IDE auto-completion, and I gave them a discoverability score as, you know, good and okay. But that's why DSLs are a pain, because like you don't know. You just don't know what you can do. This is the problem with all DSLs. This is the problem with, say, using Gradle build system, for instance, which is, it uses Groovy. And Groovy's got loads of DSLs and Gradle's got its own DSL. And when you want to find out what you can do in a Gradle build script, you're like, well, the IDE's no help. And then maybe you need a plugin for your IDE, or you have to go trawling documentation. And it's the same with every single DSL system that's out there. That I've had experience with. Why is this green here? Is that because why is that green? I'm not sure why that's green. It's a bit weird. Oh. Why is this green? I don't know. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Let's refresh. Okay. It's not green anymore. I'll refresh my page. Weird. I don't know why that was green. Yeah, so DSLs. So I'm not sold on DSLs. So I suppose what we're going to have to do, and maybe I'll do it on my next stream. I'm not sure when that's going to be because we're going on holiday for a week or so. Is try it. We're going to have to. We're going to have to try it. We're going to have to see if we can do it. So basically, what I'm going to have to try and do is recreate the same example. Where is it? This. Come on. Right, my Floem one. You know, this example where we've got, displaying stuff. You have to try and recreate that in MakeUI. It's got it. I think it's got enough there to warrant it being tried to see how it works. I do have one concern, which is the internationalization side of things. This is what I ended up with in Visio. Is this Visio or is this Freya? This was the Visio one, but I had problems with the state and other things, and that was a fail basically. And what was good in Visio, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me switch back to this. New tab. Oh, wrong one. Okay, we're in the right place already. MakerPnP. This one. So I created my example, and then I tried to actually use what I learned in my actual application. And what I liked in Visio was that I could change my language, and it works, right? And we have Floem translation files. And where they are used, for instance, Let's have a look. Oh yeah. Home. I forget. I forget where it was. Oh, I haven't done these ones. Okay, I did some of them. I did the toolbar ones, didn't I? Yeah. Yeah, is where I could create a label like this, and it's localized, and it just uses the language. This was missing from Floem. It doesn't have the support for this. Maybe it's possible to add it into Floem, but I don't know how that's going to work in this. I did note somewhere in the repo, which I've now lost, this one. There was a comment about it here somewhere. Yeah, this was it. Finally, we still lack a significant function in the areas of font rendering and internationalization. I need internationalization. I'm going to be creating a large application which is going to be used by many people in many countries, well, hopefully, around the world, and they all want to do things in their native language, right? And internationalization is something that you need from the get-go when you're creating an application these days. It's true in mobile apps, it's true in desktop apps, it's true in web apps. Adding support for internationalization after the fact is a real pain. Areas that it becomes like a real pain in is when you've got string interpolation and plurals and things like this. They're a real pain to deal with when you're trying to add support for for different languages. And if you don't know about how you're going to do it initially, you make a lot of decisions that are probably bad, or you know you're going to need work on. So for instance, like lists of things in a drop-down box, right? You can't just put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there and it'd be fine. No, you've got to get those lists from somewhere. You've got to get the keys, and then you've got to look up those keys in your internationalization system, and that system needs to be dynamic so that you can change the language on the fly without restarting the program, ideally. If I have to restart the program, that's not the end of the world, and I'd still be okay writing an application like that. But with no internationalization support built in, it's kind of, yeah, concerning. So let's just see if this statement that we just found here is up to date with what's in the repo. Social media fudgy. Yes, all the code is up on repo. So for instance, I'll be forking this and then trying to create an example app in it. Let me find so Hydra Visio. So for instance, I've got a branch here with my tab document example. No, wait a sec. So I'll just paste a link to this in a moment. Right, so this is the Visio one, just pasting a link to that. And then there's also the Floem one. Tab document UI branch. Examples, tab document UI. Here's the other one. There you go. I think there should be one for Freya somewhere as well. Yeah. When I was experimenting with Freya, I was experimenting with Freya in my project. And then I went, no, this is silly. I need to create a standalone sort of concept of what I'm trying to do, for which I wrote the documentation, wrote the requirements for a while back ago. But I wrote these requirements for this test case after I'd used Freya. So there's no sort of Freya example. But there is some stuff that I was experimenting with and failing with as well. So in the next stream I'll have a go at doing that. It's getting on a bit now. Yeah, we've been going 3 hours or so this evening, this investigation into this. So that's it's late enough for me. So yeah, we're gonna find out. Yeah, so we're gonna look and see if there's any internationalization support. That's what let's quickly do that, because we were just talking about that and I'd forgot about it because of the question. MakerPnP, Visio Flow, MakePad. This one. Let's just search for I18N. No. L10N, because Visio calls it L10N, which is localization, apparently. I thought it was a typo. Freya calls it I18 in some places and I18N in others, which is annoying. Oh, let's turn off the whole word search and do that again. Yeah, I would expect to see at least one of those two words come up. Let's look for translate. Translate will come up because of like 2D point transformations and drawing routines and things like that. So yeah, so it doesn't look like there's support for it, because this, it's no good, because this basically needs to be I don't know. It needs to have something that works the same way as like this color does, for instance. So it needs to have, like I18N, just as a dumb example. And then what is this? This is the intro header content line 2. It needs some sort of like key in here that you use instead of the text, and then that text needs to be in a separate file, like we had with Visio, for instance, where we've got, was it this one? No, I'm looking at the wrong project. Like we had here, right? These are the keys. So you need to use keys in places like this. And like everywhere that you see text, it needs to support like a key. Similar to how color supports a hash and then a value, right? And then it needs to use this key and then look it up using some context, and if there's a view tree or something, or if you've got this, you've basically got this tree that's like this, right? And for some of the application, you would probably want to specify I18N, I don't know, I18N, and I don't know, some settings for it up here. And then you might want to be able to dynamically change the language for this thing that lives in the view tree, or this whatever this app tree is. I don't know about it. And then in some places, you might want to define another one that you can change the language for independently, so that you can have sections of your UI rendered in different languages. Why do you want that? If you're creating an application which generates, say, like a report, let's just say, and you want to specify the language for that report and then see that report on the screen using your report viewer, right? Your report viewer container will have a language translator thing on it. We use a different set of translations to the rest of the UI that contains the report viewer, which will be in the user's native language. So you always need support for more than one localizer or translator thing. And they're based on the sort of tree of elements, as it were. You always need two, or more than one. And then for any given element, how it should probably work is it should go, okay, where am I? I'm trying to render this. Is there an I18N thing defined on this? No. Okay, let's go. Is there one defined on this? No. Let's go up. Is there one defined up here? No. Yeah, that kind of way. It just walks back up the tree to find the nearest one that's configured, and then it gets the language from that, and then it knows which language is supposed to be used for that element, and then goes and looks up the key. Right? That's how it needs to work for me, and for other people that I've worked for in the past as well. So it doesn't have that. So I don't know, maybe it's something we could add. Let's have a look at this view, the label thing, to see how this text works. It uses an arc string mod. What happens to this text? Draw text. And it goes text as ref. And it gets a string back. But then what does it do with it? It passes it to draw walk. So it should probably happen. Yeah. It probably needs to be something else. I don't know whether the developers have got any plans for internationalization stuff, or whether anyone's even started doing it. Yeah. I'm just going to ask in the Discord, is anyone working on I18N translation localization? And we'll see if anyone responds, because maybe someone's working on it and we can use what they've done so far. I don't know. Okay, so no internationalization. That's the answer. Internationalization, no. There might be this visual editor thing, but we can have a look into that, but not today. There's some other things on here which we don't know about yet as well. Tooltips. I'm going to need tooltips. Like, you need tooltips to go, what on earth is this, before you click it, right? Did I see tooltips in the example? Oh, with our amazing red text. I don't see any tooltips. I'm going to say no, and if there is one, we'll change it. Yes, I think it was resizable, wasn't it? We already tested that earlier, yeah. Yes, that's okay. So this is the lack of these is concerning, because I'm not in the business of writing widgets for UI systems. I'm in the business of writing software to solve a problem that I've got for a particular space that I'm trying to fix, which is creating software for pick and place machines, planning software for pick and place machines, and then machine control stuff later. And I know I'm going to need lists and tables and things that look a bit like a spreadsheet. And I don't want to have to write all that stuff myself, because I'm going to be dealing with lists of components, their widths, their heights, like their footprints, the names, the manufacturer part number, reference designators, and all this kind of stuff. And there's going to be lists and tables and all this kind of stuff, and they need to be clicked on, navigated using the keyboard, edited, drop downs, different colors in the cells, and all this kind of stuff, right? So the lack of that functionality is concerning me. Not for my tab document example, but just for my main application. All right. Okay. Thanks for following along, everybody. So, just remember, it's only software. How hard can it be? We'll find out on the next one. See ya.